Hello and welcome to this edition of the France 24 interview. Our guest is the President of the High Council of State of Libya. Welcome to France 24.
Hello.
Emmanuel Macron described the meeting in Paris as historic.
The meeting in Paris was an important step regarding Libyan dialogue and for figuring out the Libyan problem. However, it isn't the final step, nor is it a crucial step.
What do you mean by it isn't a crucial step?
It isn't crucial because there are certain topics that are important and crucial that were put aside.
For example?
For example, the existing institutions in eastern regions that need to be quickly dissolved. And there's also the question of the Libyan army.
You demand the dissolution of the existing institutions in eastern Libya.
I don't demand it, but the political agreement clearly states that all existing bodies outside of the agreement must be dissolved. The agreement only recognizes the government of national accord.
But Emmanuel Macron has stated that the period for challenging its legitimacy has expired and that you have now entered a new period.
Without the challenge of the legitimacy, we could have signed the agreement.
And you could have met in Libya.
As the President also explained, the agreement was not signed because the two sides don't recognize each other. I do not recognize a commander-in-chief of the army named Khalifa Haftar. I recognize a commander-in-chief of the army called Fayez al-Sarraj, and Abderrahman Touil, Chief of Staff in Tripoli, and
Libyan Army Commander Akhil Saleh.
No, we recognize Fayez al-Sarraj. Everyone does. Akhil Saleh is self-proclaimed. He has seized the office of the Speaker of Parliament and expects to stay in this position or to have a higher one. On the other hand, he refuses to participate in an agreement that will get us out of this situation. Whoever wants to return to the political landscape should do so through the ballot box.
So Haftar isn't an element within the equation.
Haftar is the result of something accomplished by force, not by legitimacy. I said this clearly to the President's special envoy when he invited us. I told him we agreed to negotiate with Haftar, but we do not recognize his legitimacy.
Have you spoken directly with him in Paris? Have you spoken to Akhil Ben Saleh?
No. Even during the private meeting, we did not speak directly.
Did you shake his hand?
Not Haftar's.
You didn't shake Haftar's hand.
How am I going to shake his hand and...
Yet you smiled.
How am I going to shake Haftar's hand while 130,000 people can't find enough food during this month of Ramadan because he suffocated them for 2 years?
Do you mean Derna?
Yes, Derna.
Is that the condition you proposed, Derna?
Yes.
The need for a ceasefire?
Yes, a ceasefire. We got in contact with the presidential cabinet the night of the signing. I told this to the president's envoy when he came to meet me in Tripoli. I asked for a stop in the fighting and the opening of secure passages as a gesture before beginning dialogue.
Akhil Saleh considers it a red line.
We have passed many red lines. For the sake of the country, we have to cross many red lines that they claim to have. What is happening is not a fight against terrorism, but a liquidation of political rivals. We are all fighting terrorism. Derna fought against terrorism and drove Daesh out of the city. Daesh was expelled and defeated and left for Sirte. Haftar's forces who claim to fight terrorism have not stopped and have not fired a single bullet.
Since the time of Gaddafi, we have heard that there are a large number of jihadists in Derna.
Yes.
So are you against terrorism, yes or no?
We are against terrorism in all its forms.
Those who use weapons in Derna, do you consider them terrorists?
Not at all. There is terrorism. The inhabitants have faced terrorism and have expelled it. Those people are challenging the legitimacy of Haftar too. Haftar claims to fight terrorism, but he also fights these political rivals. It started from Benghazi. There is terrorism and terrorists there. We said it well.
There have been attacks recently in Benghazi.
Haftar had to get involved with the revolutionaries to chase the terrorists, but Haftar put the revolutionaries and the terrorists in the same basket to liquidate his political rivals. When the terrorists left Benghazi, the war continued. This is an important point that must be emphasized. Several leaders of the revolution were with Haftar. He honored them for their courage and bravery before considering them as terrorists, and he killed them. For example, Hussein Ben Hamid, to whom he paid homage. There are photos of them in the military operations room during his war against Gaddafi.
You speak in this way, and they say that Khaled al-Mechri belongs to the Muslim Brotherhood and that we cannot negotiate with him.
Yes, I belong to the Muslim Brotherhood.
And you state that clearly.
I have never denied it, but today I don't represent the Muslim Brotherhood or their political actions.
Who do you represent then?
Today I represent the Supreme Council of State and all its entities.
So he has no right of reviewing the constitution.
Listen,
I will repeat what Aqil Saleh told me. He considers that the only parliament has the right to lead the constitutional revision.
that isn't true. Aqil Saleh has accepted.
And why talk about September 16th then? The French president talks about September 16th. And why talk about organizing the elections by settling for the constitutional declaration?
Listen, when there is a big dispute, you have to organize meetings. That's why I told you it's an important but not crucial step. She brought our visions closer together and managed to gather all the parties around the same table, even though we didn't say hello or speak directly. At the private meeting with President Macron, our statements, mine and Aqil Saleh's, were contradictory. He sees in the group of 60, meaning the Constitutional Commission, a committee that is gone, and that there is no constitution and that it is rejected by the Libyans. While the commission was voted almost with the same results of those of the parliamentary elections, she did her job. The parliament must just present the text to the popular referendum. Aqil Saleh is not satisfied with the constitutional draft, so he claims that Libyans are not as well, as if he represents all Libyan opinion. I said this to the president. No one has the right to confiscate the liberty of Libyans and forbid them to vote for the constitutional draft that was drafted by an elected institution. And all these articles were voted by 2/3 of the commission.
You agree to respect all the articles of the joint declaration.
Yes, of course.
Are you going to apply them?
Yes.
How? You will return to Tripoli and then...
The steps of the execution of the declaration will be done with the United Nations.
The international community will be a witness?
Yes. And after?
Does that mean there is a verbal commitment?
Beyond the verbal commitment, there is a moral commitment.
Who refused to sign the accord?
That came from our part. We came up with this issue at the end of the negotiations because we refused to give a status to Haftar. We do not recognize his status as a marshal or as commander of the army. That's important to us.
Who watered down the content of the articles of the joint statement?
We had our own remarks. The other side did as well. We had to compromise, and for that we deleted some paragraphs.
Were you concerned that the absence of certain parties during the negotiations, Misrata, for example, would have weakened you?
I informed the French of the importance of having an armed entity.
The armed entity is presented by Haftar.
Excuse me, I wanted to talk about the West. So I proposed the forces of al-Bunyan al-Marsus. I clearly communicated this message to the president's envoy during his 2 visits. He didn't dispute it, but during the logistical organization, they asked us to bring a representative of the forces into our delegation, something we have done. When we arrived to Paris, we demanded their presence to the president's envoy, and we had the agreement. We contacted the forces of al-Bunyan al-Marsus to come as a separate party. But it happened at the last minute. They informed us that they too must meet to make a unanimous decision, but they couldn't. We, as the State Council, we insisted on the presence of al-Bunyan al-Marsus. If they were there, they could have sat in the same table as Haftar.
Well, and the supporters of the old regime, they must also be part of the equation.
Obviously, supporters of the old regime are part of the Libyan people.
Even Saif al-Islam?
Listen, every Libyan must form part of the equation, except those who are sought by justice until they are judged. We do not reject any Libyan who does not have problems with justice. Haftar is also wanted by the chief military prosecutor. He is suspected of having organized a coup. In France too.
In that case, you will never leave this vicious cycle.
Listen.
Is there reconciliation in Libya?
Reconciliation is linked to transitional justice.
Where is transitional justice under these conditions when there is a constitutional crisis? Do you have
Yes, there is
independent
an independent justice.
Do you consider it to be independent?
Very much. We do not interfere with justice. Justice bears all the power. Justice has ruled in several landmark cases in Libya, either for one side or the other. Justice is one of the few institutions for which there is no strife. What's more, when we discussed the modification of sovereign posts, I proposed to Mr. Akila Saleh during the meeting in Rabat that we must not negotiate 3 posts that are problematic: the Attorney General, the President of the High Court and the High Electoral Commission. He nodded because the nature of these institutions is sensitive and they must remain neutral, and that there is no disagreement around them today.
So, quickly, are you against any foreign intervention in Libya?
Categorically.
Whatever country it be?
Whatever country it be.
There is no country that you support?
No country supports me.
Support and intervention are 2 different
no
things.
No country supports me or intervenes in my work, either as President of the Higher Council of State or as Khaled al-Mechri.
Do you have a good relationship with Ali Salabi?
No.
Not at all.
Ali Salabi wrote an article during my first participation in the negotiations in Morocco, claiming that I am against the will of the Libyan people. I do not share the same positions as him or any current politics that represent me. I am not saying that we are adversaries, but we disagree. Salabi does not support me in any way, whether directly or indirectly.
Khaled al-Mechri, thank you very much. Thank you for following us. Goodbye.